Just like to offer a big shout out to Touchdown Digital, the sponsor of this week's video. Well, hello everybody, Glenn Samuel here. Today I want to talk to you about emotion in our photography, in our landscape photography. Now, emotion is a very strong word in any sentence. It doesn't matter which way you look at it, it doesn't matter which way you think about it or say it. So creating emotion in your photography is of the utmost importance. Now, photography, in my personal opinion and my personal belief, is the image must capture something that instills an emotional reaction to the viewer, the people looking at your photographs. But how do you go about creating emotion in your images? Well, it's a very good question. I'm very interested in this subject and I love talking about this and I love teaching it. A quick story. About 12 months ago, I was conducting a workshop and there was 8 participants in this workshop. And whenever I run a workshop, there's one question that I always ask, and that is, why have you come along today for this 3-hour workshop? 99.99% of people give me the same answer. And it's usually along the lines of, well, I just want to become better at photography. I want to learn how to work my aperture settings and get the exposure right with the ISO, and I want to know what ISO means and how it affects the other two when it comes to taking photographs. But there was one particular gentleman in this particular workshop that when I asked him this question, he said to me that his images didn't have that wow factor. They weren't getting the response that he thought he would get by people looking at his photographs. Now, technically, this gentleman was perfect. He was spot on, 100%. He knew everything about his camera. He knew everything about exposure, the exposure triangle, compensation, the available light on the day that we were shooting in. Everything was perfect. So I asked the question again, so why don't you think your images are creating a reaction from the viewers? He said they just don't have it. So anyway, we proceeded with the workshop, and at the end of the workshop, he was the last one to leave, and I walked up to this guy and I said, listen, how about you and I spend a couple of days together and we'll go out and we'll just shoot, and that way I can just see what you're doing and what you're thinking. And he looked at me rather strange. I said, you asked me, I asked you the question, you said that your images didn't have impact. Well, I want to see what you're doing out in the field to create impact. So the day came around and we went out and we went to this beautiful location here in the mountains, and the light was perfect. It was a beautiful morning, and I watched this guy set up. Everything was perfect, the tripod height, the level, everything was correct. So I said, right, before you take the photograph, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. And that first question was, what are you thinking about? And he said to me, well, I'm looking at my settings and the exposure's right, the histogram's good. I said, no, I don't want to know that because I know you know that. What I want to know is what you're thinking. And this is where the emotion comes into play here. I said, so what are you thinking? Right here, right now, what are you thinking? And he said, well, I'm thinking about, I've got to go to work tonight. This is my last week of night shift. Plus I stayed up late last night watching the football and my team got beaten on the scoreboard, so I'm a bit angry about that. I said, hold it right there. I think I've just discovered your problem. And he looked at me rather strange. And I said, you're not in the moment. You're not owning the situation. You're letting external factors interfere with what you're trying to achieve here. In other words, you can't think about this actual shot, this actual scene in front of you, because you're not emotionally invested in it. And he looked at me and he thought, yeah, I suppose you're right. So I was starting to get him to think about this. And this is what it is. This is what I call creating emotion in your image. So I said, if you can push aside all that external stuff that you're thinking about, then just solely and wholly concentrate on the scene in front of you. You need to have a 360-degree investment in what you're looking at through your viewfinder. So don't think about what you've got to do tonight. Don't think about the working week you've just had. Don't think about what restaurant you're going to take your partner out to tonight. Don't think about anything like that. What you need to be doing is focusing and thinking about what's in front of you and how are you going to create, make, and take this image. Anybody can take a photograph. Let's face it, they can. But creating emotion in an image is a mental thing. This is very psychological thinking here. And it is a very deep subject, I know. So just bear with me. So once he started thinking like that, and he started to show me the images, I could see an improvement. So what I did, I walked away from him. I walked away. I went back to the car and I left him for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And I came back and I said, how are you going? He said, pretty good. I like these shots. I said, do you think you'll get a reaction? I said, well, I think I might. So anyway, cut a long story short, about 6 weeks later, he called me, and this is fantastic. He said, you wouldn't believe it, Glenn. I've actually sold some of the images from the morning I was out with you. I said, that's fantastic. But what did the people say? He said, well, what I did, I went to my local markets and spent $150, hired a marquee and a few tables, and I set up my photographs, and people were coming over to me and they were commenting on my photographs. What did they say? I asked him. And this is what he said. He said, one lady came up to me and she brought one of the photographs that I'd printed out that I took with you on that morning. And she said, this is fantastic. It's like I was standing next to you when you took the photograph. Bingo. I said, mate, you've done it. That has created emotion towards that viewer, to that lady that purchased your photograph. You created emotion because you weren't thinking about external things. You weren't thinking about external pressures going around you, right? You have to be heavily invested in this. And he thanked me for it. So basically what I'm trying to say here in this video today is that you have to exclude all these thoughts. Now, with photography, a lot of people say, and it's true, I say it too, you have to exclude all the border junk around your frame, any trees or branches coming in. If they're not going to play a part in the scene, you don't want them. But then you also got to include what you want in the scene. But also you don't want to include your thoughts other than what you're thinking about. This is how you create emotion with your images. Now, some of the best photographs I've ever seen from photographers gone past, in the past, have been very simple compositions. But they're a powerful aspect to that image because they've been zoned in on that moment. For me personally, after all my research, after all my due diligence in trying to find locations, if I arrive at this location and I'm not feeling it, I'll either wait to see what Mother Nature's going to do with the light, or I'll just put my gear back in the car and go home. I won't even take any photographs if I'm not feeling the moment. You have to own the moment. You have to feel the environment within you and what's around you. This is how you create emotion in photography. You look at the composition, the lighting, but if your mind's not there, if you haven't got your game face on, well then the image is just going to be like everyone else's. And I believe in photography, you have to improve every time you go out with your camera. That's how you become a great photographer from being a good photographer. So if you're going out there and your mind isn't fully fixed on what you're doing, then maybe you should watch this video again and watch it again and again until you get it. I know it's a heavy subject, but it's a fantastic subject. I really love talking about it. I love teaching this, and I do teach this. Think about what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. Don't even think about editing the image. Don't even think about racing home, putting it in Lightroom or whatever editing program you use. Don't even think about that. Think about the now when you're in front. I've just got back from a very early morning shoot here. It was -2 degrees, freezing cold. And I found a couple of old buildings, which one is a haunted house, which I'll put up in another video, but it will be on social media for people that have subscribed to my social media pages, Sniper Photography on Facebook. Have a look at that. You will see the images there. But I was zoned in on the moment. I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't think about anything else that happened this week. Didn't think about clients that are slow in paying me. I didn't think anything like that. I was thinking about capturing the haunted house and the fog and everything like that. This was, you're boxed in, okay? So start thinking that way every time you go out to take a photograph. Think about the scene and what you're trying to accomplish, because the idea is you've got to bring out that emotion in your image, which will then transfer to the photograph, which then in turn will create emotion or pull emotion from the viewer. Just like that lady said when she brought that print off one of my students in one of my workshops, is that she felt like she was standing right next to him when he pushed the shutter button. That is success. So emotion in photography, try and do it, try and get it. And the way you can do it, as I said, is forget about all this other stuff that's going on. You know, you've just had the car registration turn up in the mail, it's big money. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I need you to go out and really concentrate on that scene and then photograph it to the best of your ability and create that emotion. Create it. If you're feeling it before you push that shutter button, or when you push the shutter button, it'll go through your camera lens onto the sensor, into your editing program, and the final image will contain all that emotion that you had. It's drawing the emotion from you. I know this is a very mental thing, but believe you me, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I quickly learned that I need to be emotionally attached to each and every scene that I photograph to create the emotion for the viewer. So think about that. I'd like to know what you think about this one. Put your comments and thoughts down below and I'd certainly get back to you. It's a fantastic subject and very, very important if you want to succeed and grow as a photographer. Creating emotion with your photography is, I believe, up there with everything else that we talk about photography, especially the skill set and how you can tell the story through emotion with your images. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. Thank you for joining me here today. Love to hear back from you. As I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling. Bye for now.